Now, before I go any further, let's just take a look at the final result of what we are going to cover today. So here it is from inside After Effects. And basically, we are going to do an advanced walkthrough. Some of the things we are going to actually generate from scratch. Other stuff I'm just going to show you how to take care of, how you can create it. This is just going to be the first part. After we are going to create this inside After Effects, I'm actually going to switch to Mocha Pro and Premiere Pro. And this will help us to composite the finished template, which is this guy, onto an iPad using, of course, some other BCC effects. And we're going to do this actually in real time inside Premiere Pro. And this is the result of that. Okay, and now we'll run preview quickly for you. Okay, so this is what we are aiming for. Let's just close the footage viewer, and here we are inside the After Effects. Just so you'll know, this is one of my broadcast template pieces, which is part of more than 40 templates, all done using Adobe After Effects and BCC, of course. If you want to see them all, go to sternfx.com/products. I even have a package for Premiere Pro for those editors out there. So this project was done mostly inside After Effects, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time today. I'm going to show you how to auto-animate effects to music, create some impressive volumetric smoke, and also add some nifty 3D titles, along with some particles streams, and all this, of course, is going to be, I'm going to do it using, of course, BCC. So we're going to actually start with some easy textures creation. And what I have over here is the same composite, but basically I've turned off all the layers. So everything that we're going to do here is based on synthetic layers. So I've got a couple of solid layers. Some of them are colored cyan, just so it will be a little bit easier for me to know where I'm going with it. There's another audio here, which we're going to tackle in a moment. I'm also going to press on the source name here. So I've named all my layers. This hopefully will make more sense to you as we are advancing through this webinar. And here on top, I've got a few lights and my design camera. So basically, when I'm starting to work, I'm usually just creating a design camera. This is just a regular 50mm camera inside After Effects. And only then, after everything is settled in place, then I'm going to do the fancy camera move, which I'm going to cover later. But for now, let's just turn on the eye for this solid layer, which I've named floor, very easy to recognize. And I'm going to also hop to the effect controls. Here you can see that I've already applied the BCC steel plate effect. This is a great way to start with some repetitive textures. Now, as most of the BCC effect, if you don't know what they are doing, just go ahead and press on this FX browser. This will show you few samples, which are basically presets that you can, jump start or select them in order to, continue and modify. For example, I've saved this one, so the rust.bsp, this is the preset that we're going to start using. And of course, you can also open up the control, and you've got plenty of things to select. Most of them are self-explanatory. This is one of the simple effects, so I'm not going to go in depth in this case, but I will show you a couple of extra stuff on the way. Now, in order to make sure that this floor is actually stretching from, beyond the boundaries of the regular comp, and by the way, I'm just, if you are curious, to see the composite setting, I'm using a full HD here, and this is my frame rate, and the duration is 10 seconds, just so you know. So in order to make it a little bit more wide in terms of our 3D world dimension, I'm going to enable this CC reptile effect. Although the misleading name CC doesn't really relate to BCC, this is a built-in effect inside After Effects. And what it will allow you to do is extend the layer beyond the boundary of the physical layer itself. So in this case, I've already set it up to 1500 for the right and the left and the up, and a little bit more for the down. So we have a lot of room here which is actually going to help us. It's also going to render much faster than go and duplicate another instances, right, one next to the other. So this is a great way and a real-time saver. On top of this, I've applied the BCC Triton effect, once again, just because I can. I really love this effect. It is simple to use. It's got much more control and fine-tuning than the regular built-in Triton effect that ships with After Effects. And as before, you can browse for presets and stuff. These are like, very easy effects and nothing too fancy. Now, I've already placed a BCC vignette on top of everything over here. It doesn't really make sense right now, but when we are going to place the title in a moment and create all those fancy particles, we may want to focus the viewer's attention to the middle of the scene here. So for now, I'm just going to leave it off, and at the end, after everything is going to be light up and filled with eye candy stuff, we may want to return it and turn it on once again. I'm going to skip the lens flare. Don't worry, this demo is not going to be without lens flare, so I'm going to skip it and work on the lens flare, enable it in the end. But for now, I'm just going to turn on another solid layer, which already has an effect on it. Or effect, I'm going to start at this point with the PCC Particle Array 3D. And once again, just to show you that everything is registered using the After Effects built-in 3D tools, meaning the light and the camera, I'm just going to turn around. Now, currently my lights are switched off. I'm going to turn them on in a moment. But as before, I just want to hop very quickly into the FX browser in order to show you what this effect can do for you. So let's just select one of those presets, and I'm just going to play, just so you can see that you have this amazing 3D grid of particles which are consistently here, and you can actually deform them or use other method in order to control the shape. So everything is really quick and fast, and you can create some really amazing and nice animations just by using the preset as a starting point, or of course building your own stuff from scratch. In this case, I'm just going to cancel out because I've already laid out few of them, or even more than few, on the ceiling over here. And just to make sure that we can see them, just going to turn on the transparency grid for now. Now, there is a very great and unique tool with most of the generators inside the BCC. I mean, for that, I mean lights and particles and other effects, and it goes by the name of Beat Reactor. And this is actually a great way if you want to auto-animate your effect using a music or music track in your timeline. And this is exactly what I have here. I just want to show you how easy it is. You don't have to worry about writing any code or creating expression. All you need to do is just enable the Beat Reactor, open it up. In this case, I'm using once again the one that is under the Particle Array 3D effect. And then you just need to tell it which layer to use. So in this case, this is the layer that I'm going to use. Just in order for you to hear it, I'm going to create a run preview, or I'm also going to press double tap on the L key so you can see the waveform monitor. And just quickly so you can see, or actually we can hear what we have over here. So a consistent beat that we want, or we may want to marry some of the particles behavior to it. So once again, I'm enabling it here in the effect panel, choosing the right track, and now I can actually tell it if I want to see the graph. So once again, if I'm going to show you this time without audio, just so you can see that we have a nice EQ reference, but in this case, I'm just going to turn it off, and I'm going to apply a few parameters. Let's start with the parameter A. You can use global scale, for example. And once again, I'm just going to show you what it does. It just uses the global scale of all the particles together and scale them up. There might be a little bit of latency in the webcast, but I'm seeing it like perfectly synced. So just so you know, it's not a problem. If you feel that it's not too, or it's not enough, you want to maybe exaggerate it a little bit, just go ahead and open the settings. And in this case, I'm just going to say that let's do it 5 times stronger. And instead of global scale, let's just use another parameter here, say the fractal noise amplitude. And once again, I'm going to run preview it so you can see how easy it is and how fast it is to marry these particles to the audio. And you don't need to settle with just one parameter. You can go ahead and choose other stuff. So let's go for the B parameter with one of the disperse with propagation. Even if you don't understand what it means, you can just basically try and see how it performs. I already know that I want to make it a little bit more stronger, so I'm just going to apply 500% for the strength. And once again, quickly I'm going to run preview it so you can see the potential that we have over here. Now, in this case, I'm not going to actually use an audio guide. I just want to brag and show you how easy it is, because I'm actually using this effect a lot of times when I'm trying to auto-animate things to the music. So I'm just going to say goodbye to this. Although this is very cool, we are going to leave it off for now. Let's bring back the regular black background, and I'm going to enable another effect which I've already placed here. This is the BCC film glow effect, and I've just played with the modify the setting just a touch, so those little spheres are actually going to look as they are almost like a wall of lights or spotlights or point lights actually from above. And just to make it a little bit more obvious, I'm also going to add the BCC glitter effect on top of everything. And this is based on the luminosity, so you can see that you can actually set it to auto-revolve or evolve over time, so it will light up different balls or different spheres as time goes by. So once again, very quick and automatic way in order to add some energy. And I have to once again stress that everything is working very, very quickly, and you will see how it performs when I'm going to add more and more elements. So the next thing that I want to create, and this is an empty layer, an empty solid layer, I'm just going to enable it. I want to create some atmospherical, maybe volumetric smoke, just in order to fill the scene with something more interesting than just a black background. For that, I'm going to enable first the lights that I've already placed here. Those are basic After Effects lights, so nothing special about them. So we have point light, 2-point light over here, and another point light at the back. I've named it backlight, and some of the lights have different colors, but this is basically it. All the other 3D effects that we are going to add are actually going to communicate with those lights, and this is already looking a little bit more promising. But once again, I want to ingest more atmosphere. So from the effects and presets index search, let's search for the stage light effect. Also going to actually hide the animation presets so they won't be in our way. And I'm going to double click in order to apply the stage light effect. This is one of my favorite effects from BCC over the whole package, because it can do a lot of stuff and it's very quickly. So in this case, what I wanted to do is actually comply to the comp camera that I've already placed in the scene, and also use the comp lights. So I'm going to just enable both of those. And then I'm going to open up the smoke options over here and enable it as well. Already you can see that we have something going on in the scene. Now you have control over the C, the density, and the speed. In this case, before playing with those numbers, let's just open up the comp light, which is a general property for everything. And under the global over here, I'm just going to switch the render mode from its natural default state to something a little bit more strong. Well, this is too strong for me. So we can actually adjust the overall gamma just in order to really tune in whatever we need. And once again, I just want to show you that everything is fully 3D. So we have a real 3D smoke over here. Now, I want the density maybe to be a little bit less. So let's just reduce the density and the speed. The speed is telling the smoke how fast to animate. So if I'm just going to run preview, you can see, or even just preview, because this is the new term now inside After Effects. Anyhow, you can see that the smoke is auto-animating. Very cool, and it will actually save you a lot of money if you are just needing a handful of smoke instead of using stock footage. Now, you can, of course, duplicate the smoke and bring it before or after the tunnel. It doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm just going to leave it like this, but I want to maybe introduce a little bit more light into the scene. Obviously, we can create new lights using the lights inside After Effects, but we can also use the BCC stage light effect and generate its lights or our lights using the effect, which will be much faster. And once again, it can confirm to the 3D space that we already have over here. So in order to demonstrate it, I'm just going to turn on the next layer, which already has the same effect. So now I'm using another instance of the BCC stage light effect. This time I'm only using the comp camera. So this means that when I'm orbiting around, those 3 lights are actually going to follow, but I'm using the built-in light of the effect itself. So if I'm going to open it up, we can see that we have more controls, and rendering the lights using this method is going to be actually much faster than placing another 3D light and another 3D light and messing with them. And then, if we want to change our mind, I just find out that this is much simpler. And since this is an effect that can work also inside Premiere Pro, sometimes when I need lights inside the editor, I'm going to be more than happy to use this. Since this is so cool, I've already placed another copy over here. I'm just going to turn it on so you can see the effect of both of them together. Now, the reason that they are not one on top of the other will become more evident and understandable in a moment. For now, just bear with me, because it's going to make sense in a moment when we are going to add our 3D extrusion. You know what? The moment has come. We're going to enable it now. So we have another layer here, which I've named Extruded EPS. I'm going to turn it on, and in a moment you will see that it already has some object inside. The extruded EPS is basically what you need to feed it is with some vector art in the shape of PDF or Adobe Illustrator, and it's going to do exactly as advertised, meaning that if I'm just going to zoom in into our title, you can see that it's keeping the Illustrator colors and also extruding the vector art according to what we are going to choose underneath. I'm not going to bother with all the options over here. There are plenty of tutorials over Boris FX if you want to learn all those nifty informations. I'm just going to show you a few things that you may have missed, but just so you'll see what I mean in terms of keeping the colors from Illustrator, I'm going to actually replace the file for a moment with another version, with another file. So let's just, for the example, I'm just going to use this one. And you can see that we have 2 colors. So once again, this is a great feature which actually going to save you a lot of time if you already did some color work inside Adobe Illustrator and you just want to go from this point instead of defining new materials and new colors here inside After Effects. So it's up to you, by the way. Since it's up to you, it's also up to me. I'm going to replace it with the original logo that I've already had over here. And let's just scroll down for a moment, because I really want to show you something which is, I think, very useful, and especially for clients who want explosion. One of the most requested features from my clients are to create some explosion. Can you explode this? Can you explode that? As long as it's not their logo, they are ready to explode everything in this scene. And here we have a couple of deformers. Especially, I want to call your attention to this use shutter deformer. I'm just going to enable it for a moment. And immediately we can see that it breaks the logo in 3D space. It breaks it, and we actually have a lot of controls, but we have lots of pieces over here. Now, what I found really useful is the fact that if I'm going to fold it down, we can actually control everything over here from the crack mode, but most importantly, the time mode. So instead of just exploding it in a random fashion, I'm going to tell it to use manual timing. This means that I can tell the logo or whatever you want to explode when to do the move. So, sorry, for example, let's say that around 2 seconds, I'm going to create a keyframe for the time. And then just so we'll see it, I'm going to press U in order for After Effects to expose the keyframes. And then let's move maybe 20 frames. And I'm going to explode it, I don't know, maybe to 2. I'm also going to change the gravity to 0. And then I'm going to move, I don't know, maybe 1 second or less, keeping the same value. So the easiest way to keep the same value from here is hold down Option or Alt and just click on the words, and this will keep the same value. Of course, you can use the diamond, but just to give you something more exciting for the weekend to think about it. So another nifty After Effects shortcut, and then I'm going to reset it back to 0. Now I'm going to actually create some kind of a bullet time effect. So I'm going to select my camera, press P in order to show the position keyframes, and let's just create some keyframe over here. And then over the course of this explosion, I'm just going to move the camera around, I don't know, something like this. And let's end up over here. Now, if I'm just going to quickly show you the fast render of what we've managed to achieve, we can see how cool this effect is. And you can come up with, I guess, a lot of ways of how to use it. And of course, everything here supports motion blur. So now we're actually showing it without any motion blur, just in order to make sure that it is going to be speedy enough. But if I'm just going to press on the motion blur icon, since the motion blur switch for the layer is enabled, you can see that we have nice motion blur support for this guy. Okay, so I know that you got attached to it, but we're actually going to dismiss these keyframes for the camera. And I'm also going to disable the shutter deformer. It's just too much for this job, but I just want to show you how easy it is. And of course, you've got a couple of other things to explore. So if you haven't taken a look to the curl and the twist and the ripple and the pulse, go ahead and check what they can do for you. It's great stuff. And most of the 3D effects under the 3D objects supports those deformers. Okay, so I'm going to close this guy, and I'm going to enable the shadow and the reflection. The shadow and the reflections are both duplicates of this version of the same thing, but I've just placed them underneath the floor. And the shadow here is also accompanied by a few transformation and a pyramid blur, just in order to create a more realistic look of contact shadows. I think it's really helping to sell the idea. And as just to demonstrate, but as I told you before, everything is 3D aware, meaning that if we are going to actually come behind the camera and do this kind of move, it's still going to work very, very nicely, which is a huge advantage. And as you can see, it's also very, very responsive. Now we have actually a couple of extra layers to worry about, so we're not just using floor and particles. Great stuff. Okay, so let's dress it even further. Let's just create some nice particle streams as promised. I'm just going to select this solid. It doesn't have anything yet on top of it, so just a plain cyan solid, which is very exciting. But on top of this, I'm going to add the PCC particle emitter 3D effect. And this is a full-blown particle system which you can create a lot of interesting stuff. I'm just going to give you some quick recipe of how you want to maybe approach a particle stream, something that goes from the ceiling and then also collide with the floor over here and bounces all around, just in order to make it a little bit more easy to see. Let's solo this guy and also the floor. These are the elements that we want to concentrate now. I'm also going to switch off motion blur for the moment. And once again, we can tell it to use comp lights and comp camera. This is what I'm going to do. I don't really care about the comp lights because I don't want to attach any particles to the lights. So I'm just going to leave those guys off. But for the emitter, I'm just going to open it up. And just, I'm sorry that I'm digressing, but just as before, if you don't have a clue what this effect does, make sure to first step into the FX browser. I almost forgot to show you, but here we have some fantastic built-in presets which are actually quite useful if you want to really just start with something. So make sure to select them, go ahead and press play, and it will play it inside the FX browser in real time so you can get a sense of how each one of those is looking, and you can start from this point. But we are going to actually do some manual labor over here. So just make sure to visit it. Now we know what we have. Let's start once again with the emitter. So under the emitter, I'm just going to exaggerate in terms of birth rate. I really want a lot of particles at the beginning. Actually, not at the beginning, all the way through. So let's start with 3000 in this case. For the speed, it doesn't need to be so fast. Let's switch it to 12. And by the way, of course, I did some trial and error here. So those numbers that I'm giving you are not magic numbers. They're just actually working for me in this case. You can, of course, you are more than welcome to play along with those in order to generate some unique results. But I moved along, and for the speed random percent, I set it to 25. The lifespan will be 3. This is measured in seconds. And the position, I actually want it to be somewhere over here since I've already played with it. I'm just going to plug in numbers for the X and Y, so 170 pixels for the X, and then I'm going to tab to the Y and say negative 150. And this, I'm just going to show you what it is. This will locate it over here at the top of the ceiling, very close to the ceiling, a little bit above the ceiling. And in order for us to make it go down, we need to play with the gravity factor. So let's just go with maybe 55 for now. Go to the beginning and then just press spacebar or run preview the result to see this intermediate result. So we have a nice beginning of a showering particle system. Let's just position ourselves a little bit more easy so it will be more obvious. I'm just going to close the emitter since I'm done with it, and let's deal with the particles themselves. Well, you can choose from a lot of different 3D or 2D particles. In this case, these streams of particle will be so tiny and so small, I'm not going to even bother with it, but you do have a lot of options. So I'm even going to reduce it to lower size. Let's go with 12 for the size. So we really have almost like a pixie dust effect and some size random, maybe around 50%. And in order to make it a little bit more vivid and happy, we need to change the color mode. We can just choose a different color, but I really love this gradients option over here. So I'm going to start, or I'm going to choose the gradient random. This will open up huge options over here. And once again, I'm just going to play with few of the presets, the built-in stuff, just to get myself some good starting point. And if I don't like one of the colors, I can simply turn it on or off according to the needs. Okay, so let's just deal with that. Let's just say that this is okay and move on. I think that what will make it a little bit more interesting is the blending mode over here, since we have a lot of particles, one on top of the other. I'm going to switch it from normal to the additive blending mode. This will give us a hot spot over here. Once again, I'm just going to preview a few frames for you so you can get a sense of how this is building up. Okay. Now, the most exciting stuff, I think, is going to be under the physics. And instead of external forces, I'm going to tell it to interact with other layers just by switching the physics mode. And this will make this interaction with layers option, it will make it available, so we can enable it right now. I'm going to set layer A type to collide with After Effects 3D layer infinite, meaning that the layer can be only a tiny square, but in terms of this effect, it will just calculate it as if it's going out of the boundaries of your composition. This is very useful. Now we need to set the interaction, but first let's choose a layer. So I'm just going to choose the floor, and then we need to take it to tell it what to do. So you've got a couple of modules. You can set it to bounce, stick, slide, or disappear. I think that bounce is obviously the most exciting one, so let's just make it bounce. And now you need to tell it how much bounciness you like. So the friction will help you with this option. I'm just going to tell it to do 120. Once again, I just play with it and, made sure that this is something that works for me. Since those effects are so quick, you can actually change your mind and decide on the go. And this is the reason why real time is so important for me. We will see it later inside Premiere Pro. Real time is not just a term, from my perspective, from my point of view as a motion designer, when something is happening in real time, it means that I don't need to wait for the machine, for the computer. I can actually decide if this is working for me or not. So this is actually makes my creation process much faster and much better. So I think that we are in good state. Let's just make it a little bit more random by opening up the fractal field over here, and I'm just going to add some movement noise. So hopefully you've seen what happened. I'm just going to reset it. Take a look at this. Just going to maybe zoom in a little bit so we can get a sense of how this affects. This is a little bit more too organized for me. If I'm going to change it to 50, now we're getting some kind of pattern, some kind of noise, which I think contribute a little bit, makes it much more believable or better, let's say. Okay, let's settle with those things. Now, of course, we can save it if this is something that you want to use. Just, go ahead and press save. It will appear in the FX browser as well, so you can preview it later if there's a need. But for now, let's just dress it up. I'm going to add some film glow. I really love the BCC film glow effect. It's a little bit too strong, I think, in its default state. Let's leave the glow intensity as is, but work on the radius. Let's just cut it down to half and play with the threshold. Actually going to reduce the threshold all the way to 0 and also reduce the desaturation. I'm actually looking for some hotspot over here, and not so much for the other stuff. So something like this should work pretty nicely. Really nice glow, which will make everything really shines, and this is, of course, our purpose. Now we can, of course, continue to dress it up and make it more believable. But I think it's looking quite nice. Let's just check it with the other layers so we can see how everything is going to look together. Just choose a different angle. I think that we are in good state. Since I thought that it is really helping in order to sell the shot, and once again, I'm choosing the same colors. So, I'm not just choosing colors arbitrary. So there's a method to my madness. If I have some, colors over here, like the warm gold and this version of cyan over here, those colors should appear in other places as well. And this is what I did. I duplicated the same particle stream. So this is exactly the same thing that I showed you. Played a little bit with the other settings, added the film glow effect on top of it. And now we have one over here, one in the other side, and one over here. Now, the reason that we are looking at our After Effects comp and seeing them in different places is because the After Effects 3D world limitation. We are not actually working in a 3D unified world, so we need to actually place layers, although they are reading the vanishing point 3D information before or I should say above or below the title. So this is the reason why some of them are under the title in terms of the After Effects layer-based structures, and some of them are above. This is how the camera at the end of the day will read them. So we can see that one of the streams is just underneath. Because it is so fun to look at particles, actually particles are almost like fireworks. We can look at them, at least I can look at them without getting bored. I sense that there is a need to create some fireworks. So in this case, I'm actually starting with the fireworks spawn preset. So you can read it over here. This was my initial state, just so you'll see it on its own. And let's just zoom in so you can see what we have over here. I'm just going to press play. We have very interesting particles which are going to shower, and they, I think, will contribute to the exposure of the title once we'll have our fancy camera move, which is now. So if we want to, I mean, if we are happy with the basic design, and once again, I remind you that everything here is completely synthetic, so we can modify it as our hard content. Nothing is set in stone, and everything is generated using basic effects, which is, I think, quite amazing. But if we are fairly, I mean, if it's fairly reasonable and you are happy with the result, now it's time to actually animate the camera. Now, what I'm usually going to do is I'm going to set my first pose, and then I'm going to right-click on my design camera, probably going to duplicate it, but let's assume that I already did it, and then I'm going from the right-click menu to create an orbit null. And the null over here is actually going to be parented. Let's just see the parent column. It's going to be parented to the camera, meaning actually the camera is going to be parented to the null. And this is almost like a simple rig, which is really useful and helpful if you want to animate cameras inside After Effects. This is out of the scope of this webinar, so I'm not going to cover it. I just wanted you to be aware that there is a very cool and easy way to do it. So for this case, I'm just going to say goodbye to the null, and I'm just going to switch cameras. So I've already did this work. I'm going to show you, this is the camera that we're going to use. Actually, just so you'll see what I did, this is the camera that we're going to use, but of course we are moving it using the orbit null. I'm once again back into the design camera just so we can switch views, and I can show you basically our camera moves. So let's just turn off this camera, concentrate on the camera number one. We can see that we're actually starting from the back end of the logo, and then the camera is actually pulling out and doing some weird or strange move, and then slowly taking the whole logo in. Now, if you are going to switch it to the eyes of the camera, so meaning that this time we're actually going to see it from the camera point of view, I'm just going to scrub it, scrub the timeline, of course. You can get a sense of the camera move. And here we are doing this nice pivot, this nice orbit, which will be very difficult to achieve without the system that I just mentioned using the null method. So just showing you a few frames, you can get a sense of what I've already did. The next thing will be to enable, of course, motion blur and render it out. I've already did it, so I'm just going to place the final over here, and I'm going to run preview the result just so you can get a sense of how this will look after the render process is done. And you can get a sense of this couple of fireworks treatment that just make sure that everybody is noticing our big title here. Okay, once this is done, I'm going to move to Premiere Pro, and I'm actually going to do some compositing over there because this is not the end of the line for me. I'm going to switch to Premiere. We already saw this, but I'm just going to, Premiere is not going to, okay, sorry. It's joining us now. So I'm just going to show it to you here inside Premiere. So this is basically the same clip. And my purpose here is to take this clip, which is a stock footage clip, and place, of course, the template that we've just created on the iPad screen. So very easy. I'm just going to create from this clip a timeline here inside Premiere Pro. just because I'm a little bit compulsive, I'm going to right click here and delete the unnecessary video and audio track. On top of this guy, I'm going to add the results clip from After Effects, and we are actually ready to go. Now, first we need to actually, I'm just going to turn off momentarily the eye for video number 2. We need to track or collect the data and track the iPad screen. There's no easy way to do it inside Premiere Pro. Actually, there's no way at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Mocha Pro, and thanks to the integration between Imaginary Systems and Boris FX, we will be able to move this information from Mocha Pro very easily inside Premiere Pro. Then we will do all the other compositing stuff. Okay, so here inside Mocha Pro, I'm starting from nothing. Let's create a new project. Navigate to the same clip that we just saw. So this is it. I'm going to just quickly skim through the details. Everything looks fine, so I'm just going to say, okay, yes, I want to create a new project. Just verify that this is the right clip, and very quickly, I'm going to select the X-Spline tool and just create actually 4 points around the iPad screen. Doesn't have to be pixel perfect or precise, just encompass the area over here. There's a little bit perspective, so just in case I'm going to track perspective as well. And I'm just going to let Mocha do its magic. So this is going to track forward now. And usually I'm not going to make you sit here and watch how, progress and render bars are working, but since I really wanted you to see the real time or the amount of time that it takes to actually do this kind of stuff, we're actually going to wait for it for a moment. It's also a good opportunity for me to drink a little bit because my throat is dry, so excuse me 1 second. I urge you to drink as well. It's very important. Of course, if you're drinking water. But I'm not here to lecture about drinks, so let's just make sure that this is working. If for some reason it's not doing what you want, you can always go ahead and stop it and then modify the area where you are tracking. But this is a very easy case for Mocha to solve, so let's just wait patiently. It's going and burning through all those frames, and I'm trying to give you narrations, so commentary, and this is it. Thank you very much. Okay, so now let's press on the S over here, which will show us the planar surface. I'm also going to press and hold Z in order to get to the zoom tool. This will allow me to precisely place the corner over here, and I'm just going to encompass a little bit beyond the boundaries of the green screen, although we will have tools inside Premiere to fix it, but just in case. And in order to check the result, let's also insert and grid on 8x8 grid, zoom out. I'm just going to scroll, just going to scroll through the clip over here and make sure it's holding nicely. And if it's not holding nicely, you can of course go to the adjust track and do modifications as needed, but Mocha is not failing as expected. I just want to make sure that here this frame will get it right. Okay, so I think that we are ready to go. I'm going to export the tracking data that I've just collected from this huge list of it's not third, it's actually first party software. You can select, or you need to select in this case, the Boris FX PCC corner pin, and we need to actually save it as a file. So don't copy it to clipboard. It is not so useful in our case because we want to bring it inside Premiere Pro. So go ahead and save it. I'm going to save it to the desktop over here, and I'm going to switch to Premiere Pro. Here inside Premiere Pro, I'm going to go to the Effects tab, and I'm just going to search for Match. Now, Interestingly enough, under the match move category, we will see the match move and the corner pin effect, and this is the one that we are after. So I'm going to take the BCC corner pin effect and drag and drop it on top of this clip. Now, let's switch to the Effect Controls tab inside Premiere Pro. And an important note about this effect, this is a compositing effect, meaning that the first thing that you need to define is what is your background layer. In my case, this is video number 1, and video number 2 is actually the one that needs to be tracked on top of it. So this is the first thing that we need to do. And then you can safely turn off the eye for video number 1, so you don't actually need to see it. The composite will happen here inside the BCC corner pin effect. Now let's drag down, scroll down, and under Motion Tracker, we have the option to load the tracking data. So I'm just going to press load, navigate to wherever I saved my tracking data, and I don't need to see the motion path. I'm also going to switch to half res and just press play in order for Premiere to start caching those files. And obviously we have a decent tracking. Let's just loop it, but we do have some problems. We can see from time to time the leftovers of the green screen underneath, and this is going to be very easy to fix here inside the BCC corner pin effect. So just so you get a better understanding, I'm just going to select my program monitor, zoom into the shot at least 50% so we can get a sense of how this looks. Now back into the effects controls, I'm going to fold down the scale and offset. Note that the scale to X is actually, sorry, the lock scale between X and Y is actually active, meaning that I can, after the fact, just make it a little bit, scale it a little bit higher, sorry for that. So we are filling in the gaps, but we do need to actually compensate and create some kind of round corners. And there is a way to do it. We can go to the edge width over here and just cracking this guy. And when we are starting to do this, it's almost like if you are coming from After Effects, under the mask properties, you have the option to control the mask expansion. So this is going to do the same thing, which meaning that it's actually going to create a nice radius for it. So you need to tone it to the way or to the look that you're after. I'm going to settle with 5. Then I'm just going to raise the scale just a touch, maybe to 103. And this is fine to do it because we're actually scaling it down afterwards using the corner pin tracking data. This is looking almost perfect, maybe perfect and not almost so perfect. What doesn't really look so believable to my eyes is that we need some color matching to do, and also we need to match the grain. I'm not sure if the grain is something that you can see using the webcast quality, but we are seeing a lot of grain over here in the video, and also we need to match the blurs. So all of this can be achieved very easily using some nice BCC effects. So let's start with matching the colors. This is the reason that I wrote match over here, since I want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Okay, never mind. Underneath BCC 9 color and tone, we have BCC color and match. I'm going to drag and drop it, but this is very important. We need to drag it before the BCC corner pin effect. Remember, this is a compositing effect, so we want to correct this video before we are doing the composite. The color match effect is very simple. All you need to do is give it 3 colors of the target. So in this case, I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to say that the highlight area from the clip underneath is maybe somewhere over here. Then I'm going to set the same thing for the mid-tone. So I don't know, maybe somewhere over here should be a nice candidate for the mid-tone. And for the shadows, I'm going to take something from the floor. And just like that, this is the before and after. Hopefully you can see how easy it is to match the colors. Now, those colors are quite similar to the other one, or not to the other one, to the background layer. But if we are going to replace it, and we will replace it in a moment, those color correction are still going to work, and they will make sure that everything is going to look great. So first thing is the color match. Second thing that we want to do is maybe add some grain. So once again, I'm just going to quickly search for the grain effect. I'm going to use the BCC film grain. Once again, before the corner pin effect. And in order to see it, we need to just make sure that we are looking at 100%. I think that the amount of 12 is going to work quite nicely over here. So this is it for the film grain, very easy and fast. I want to match the blurriness or the sharpness, let's say. So I want to maybe introduce some lens blurring, which I'm going to do by starting to type lens B, and this will isolate the BCC lens blur effect, which I'm going to once again apply before the composite is done, and just play with the iris scale. So, you know, you need to make sure that it's looking believable. It doesn't need to be real. It must be believable. And I'm quoting George Lucas, who is celebrating his birthday today. So see how everything is connected? Beautiful. Anyhow, I think that the value of 3 for the iris scale is going to work fine for us. The last treatment that I want to do, I'm almost running out of time, so we have just one or maybe two treatments, but the last important treatment is to actually create some interesting movement. Once again, I can preview it here inside Premiere. This is amazing that everything is still playing back more or less in real time. So if the first instance is, or the first time that you're playing is not going to really work in real time, just let Premiere work on it. And the second time, it's actually going to cache the frames and will give you a smooth playback. This is already looking very promising, but I do want to introduce some fake camera movement. I'm going to do it using a BCC basic DVE. Actually, not basic, just let's go with the full-blown DVE. I'm going to place it, and this time underneath everything, because I want to control the whole thing, the whole composite. So let's select the BCC DVE effect. We are here in the first frame. I want to actually scale it back so it will fill the whole shot. So this is going to be something which I'm going to just eyeball. Something like this. I don't know, I think that 470 should work nicely. And then we need to play with the position X and Y. So let's just move it to the right. By the way, if you want more control, you can hold down Control on PC or Command on the Mac while you are dragging, and then the mouse will move 10 times slower. And Shift, of course, will do the opposite thing. So it will be 10 times faster. Once again, I'm just trying to eyeball it so everything will look as if the frame is filling the whole screen. Little bit of trial and error here, but I think that we are in good state. And let's set keyframes for the position and the scale for both the position and the scale. And then let's move forward. Let's go with maybe 3 seconds, and I'm just going to reset both of them to the original place. Select around or marquee around the keyframes, right click, and convert to a Bezier interpolation so it will be more ease on our eyes. Once again, I'm just going to run preview. Not run preview, actually here in Premiere, we are playing the result in real time. Don't need to run preview, and I think it's looking quite impressive. Now, the red line indicates that at the end of the day, we do need to render it. So if there's a need, just go to the sequence menu and just render effects into out. I'm going to do it in front of you in a moment, but let's just assume that after we did all this amazing work, our beloved client is coming to us, and I'm cynical in purpose, and saying, well, this is not the right template. This is not what I wanted to show here on the iPad screen. I actually referring to another template, and this is once again something that I've created using the BCC effects. More info in a moment, but for now, let's say that we need to switch it. No worries. Just make sure that you are selecting selecting the clip in the bin, hold down Alt or Option on the Mac, drag and drop it on top of this clip, and everything is going to work. So we have the same color correction, of course, the same fixes that we've created before. And all we need to do right now, if you want to check the result in real time, in real time we can also already do it, but if you want to check it in full frame, we need to render it. So just to show you that the devil is not so bad, I'm going to render in front of you. You can see that it's going to chew everything, every pixel, and under less than 40 seconds, we will be able to play the final result. So let's just wait for it. Hopefully, the things that you show was kind of an eye-opener for the possibilities of what you can do with BCC effects and how much you can accomplish when you're using them inside After Effects and Premiere Pro. Of course, we are just scratching the surface here. If you want to see more ideas, let's just make sure that this is actually playing full screen. If you want to see more ideas, make sure to visit my website, sternfx.com, and of course also check out the relevant products on my store, as well as tuning to some nice extra videos at Boris TV under their website, borisfx.com.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Jesse, and thank you, Eran, for that wonderful presentation, and I hope everybody got so much out of it. I think, judging from some of the questions, there were a lot of questions that people had, which you answered just by going through the presentation. Very good, wonderful job. Thank you again so much. And there were just a couple that I wanted to address, and one of them, which is the question which comes up all the time, is, could you share with us what your system specs are?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I think that the best way to show them, let's just hide this guy, is actually about my Mac, which is a late 2013 iMac. You can actually read it, I think, if you are still seeing my screen, but in case you don't, the processor is the i7 from Intel, 32 gigabytes, which is the minimum recommendation if you want to actually work with 3 or 4 software at the same time, and I'm using the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 780M mobile, which actually comes with the one of the iMacs. So just make sure that you are getting the NVIDIA card, which is, I think, much better than ATI. ATI? No, it's AMD right now. ATI, so old.
Yeah. But yes, you're right with that NVIDIA being very popular these days, and especially with those of us that are doing 3D work, it's important to try to be conscientious of that when you're making the purchase and setting up your machine. NVIDIA is a very good way to go. Eran, there's another question here regarding the renderers that are inside of AE, and typically I don't tend to use the ray tracer a lot myself, but I don't know if you do, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because one person asked if the extruded EPS file can utilize the Adobe built-in ray tracer in After Effects. It can, but sorry.
It can, but not directly, as it's not as powerful as the BCC. It's also slower, and once again, depending on your hardware configuration, you need to make sure that if you're using the ray tracer, you need to go to actually inside After Effects the preview preferences, which you can get from this Thunderbolt or bolting light, not Thunderbolt. What I'm talking. Anyhow, from here you can get inside the preview, and under GPU information, you need to make sure that you can actually use it. In my case, you can see that the card is not supported officially by Adobe, but if I'm going to turn it on, it will work perfectly. This is a very, very good card. And now if you want to extrude an EPS, you actually need to go through Illustrator. You don't need to go through Illustrator. It's a nice workaround, but you can actually bring it inside After Effects. And then you need to use layer, and under layer you need to convert or create shapes from the vector layer, from the EPS that you are bringing in. It will not support gradients. It will not read the colors. It will not give you as many options, and it will be much slower to render. But obviously, I'm a big fan, I have to say, I must admit, I'm a big fan of the ray tracer renderer inside After Effects. Just know that when you are switching to ray tracing, you're actually saying goodbye to a lot of, I think, important stuff like blending mode, track maps, and other stuff, which nobody tends to read, but this is, things that you need to be aware of. Obviously, this is After Effects, so we can pre-comp and we can fool this renderer and we can work around those limitations. Just know that officially Adobe announced that this Ray Tracer 3D is not going to be developed as far as I know. Things may change. Everything is flux in this area, but I guess that it's not something that Adobe is really trying to push.
Yeah, I think I've heard similar musings on that. One more question from the same respondent was, it's James Reinhardt asked if you could please show your Media and Multiprocessing tab in After Effects. He has the same system and was curious as to what you're using.
Yeah, I'm just not using it. And the reason is this is actually a kind of a hack that Adobe did themselves, but it's kind of a hack. In few weeks, we are going to actually say goodbye to this. So the next version of After Effects will not support it. I'm not using it on a daily basis. If I need to speed up my render, usually what I'm going to do is render over the network, which I found more stable and more pleasing. But this is my settings.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Eran, for your time and sharing all of your hard-earned knowledge with us. I hope everybody got a lot out of it. And I really appreciate you doing this.
Pleasure.